Hello and welcome to episode number 395 of Smart Podcast Trashy Books. I'm Sarah Wendell from Smart Bitches Trashy Books. With me today is Amanda and Sarah J. Maas. Her new book, House of Earth and Blood, the first in the Crescent City series, is out this week, and it is a much anticipated release. This is her first adult fantasy title. We are going to talk about pretty much everything. And we have questions from our Patreon community as well. I think they were probably as excited about this interview as we were, and I cannot tell you what a wonderful time we had talking with Sarah. This is so much fun. So much fun, in fact, that I think Amanda also needs to change her name to Sarah because that would make it more fun for Garlic Knitter to do the transcript, right? I want to say thank you to Emily Fisher, publicist at Bloomsbury, for coordinating all the pre-interview details. And thanks to our Patreon community for not only making the transcript possible, but for also submitting questions, particularly to Molly, Olivia, Danielle, Agnes, Taryn, and Stephanie. Your questions were wonderful. And even if I didn't include all of them, it was truly wonderful to help develop this episode with you. If you would like to join our Patreon community, have a look at patreon.com/smartbitches. Monthly pledges begin at $1, and you get to hear about upcoming interviews with super cool people, like the one we have today. And, you know, I don't want to delay getting started. This interview is long and wonderful and so much fun, and I am so excited for you to hear it. So let's do this podcast thing, on with Amanda and me talking with Sarah J. Maas.
I'm Sarah J. Maas, and I am the author of a whole bunch of YA fantasy books, the Throne of Glass series, the Court of Thorns and Roses series, and a Catwoman novel. And I've got my first adult novel, Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood, coming out on March 3rd. So yeah, I'm a writer. I read a lot of books. That's me.
Yeah, you know, books that no one has ever heard of. And, you know, you didn't sell out like a whole auditorium theater in London for your book tour or anything like that. No, which is amazing. Congratulations.
Thanks. I mean, like, that kind of shit's like crazy to me still. Like, I look at, like, I hear that, like, I get the news that it's happening. I'm like, who really wants to go see me babble on stage about like abs and like hot dudes and utter nonsense? But I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's amazing, but it still kind of blows my mind that anyone wants to come see me.
Many people, many. So, adult debut.
Yeah.
First of all, I want to say that adult fantasy novel is my second favorite unintentionally naughty term, my favorite being adult services librarian. Adult fantasy novel sounds like it could go in many directions.
Oh my, I mean, you don't even know. I've actually had one person in the past. It was some dude, some like old ass.
Of course
dude.
it was.
Oh my God. I could tell you so many stories about like the dude things that have been said to me when I describe my writing. But when this was years ago, and when I said I write teen fantasy novels, he was like, what kind of fantasies? And I was like, the like ones like Frodo and Lord of the Rings. Like, what kind of fantasies are you talking about, bro?
Ew.
Yeah. And so like he literally like he went to like a very strange like sexy place with my teen fantasy books. Who I guess had never heard of fantasy as a genre before. But yes, this is my adult fantasy novel that does actually have a bunch of sexy times, but is definitely hardcore, like real fantasy, not just sexy ones.
What was different about writing this versus earlier books? Like, did you notice a difference in addition to the sexy times between writing this and your prior series?
Not really. I mean, I think I've been asked this question a lot, as I've been doing media for Crescent City. And I've really been reflecting on, why people keep asking me, what's the difference between writing YA and adult? And for me, there wasn't much difference beyond the fact that I could get away with saying fuck like 10 times on a page if I wanted to. There were so many fucks in this novel that
yes,
my editor and I had to go through it and just like switch it up every now and then for some variation.
Did they like control F for fucks? And they're like, Sarah, we're clocking 500 fucks in this manuscript right now.
Yeah, I mean, we just like, but it was like cool because it was, one of the first times that I just was like, fuck this, fuck that, motherfucker, blah, blah, blah. And like, I wasn't like, uh-oh, can I get away with it? And instead the issue was just finding some variation of, swear words. But I mean, there wasn't much difference. And I think there's kind of this misconception out there that writing young adult is easier and simpler than writing adult novels.
No.
Yeah. And like, I mean, so many, YA books are just as complex and deep as adult books out there. And when it came to writing Crescent City, I mean, my process was basically the same as what it was for my young adult books, the deep dive into characters, into the world, building the romance. So, I mean, I guess it sounds a little like silly, but like really like the only thing that was different was, the cursing. And then, I mean, my Court of Thorns and Roses books are definitely for an older audience. I mean, I originally sold those as new adult, but new adult didn't really become like a thing in a section of Barnes and Noble. So my publisher was the one who made the decision to shelve it in YA. But the content in A Court of Thorns and Roses is very graphic. I mean, when the second book in the Court of Thorns and Roses series came out, I mean, there's a 3-day sex marathon in that book.
Well played, by the way.
Sounds like my President's Day weekend.
Well, so my family,
oh God,
God bless them. My family, reads my books. Like my parents, my grandma, they all read my books. I mean, my dad and I have this understanding that he just skips over those pages. But so when the second Court of Thorns and Roses book was about to come out, I called my grandma and I was like, Grandma, I'm going to send you one of my copies. But I just want you to know that there is some very explicit sexual material in this book. And my grandma was like, well, that sounds right up my alley.
Please tell me the page numbers.
Oh my God. I was like, my whole life is a lie. Like, who are you? Like, who is this woman who like loves raunchy romance? Yeah. So, I mean, those books had a lot of sexy times content. So, I mean, even the content in Crescent City, I think it's on the same level as what's in the Court of Thorns and Roses book. Even some of the later Throne of Glass books. So, I mean, that wasn't much of a shift for me. Yeah. And it really wasn't that much of a big change.
I did have a question. This was not on the list, so apologies, but it came up.
So two trains are leaving state. Yeah. We're just dropping in math.
You mentioned, A Court of Thorns and Roses. God, it's always a mouthful when I try to say it.
I call it ACOTAR.
ACOTAR, okay.
Yeah.
So does the internet. That's very handy.
In my brain, I never know how to pronounce that acronym. So
ACOTAR, ACOMAF, ACOWAR, ACOSTAT.
But that series is getting new covers. I saw. And they look more adult. Is that kind of a conscious decision to be like, hey, this could possibly be shelved in the adult fantasy sci-fi section?
Yes. So that was actually my publisher and I have had many conversations over the past few years because I'm sure you guys have heard this from other writers, but we're constantly looking years down the road at what is going to be coming out. And for me, I know what's coming out in 2024 at this point. And we knew that the upcoming ACOTAR book, the Nesta novel, which I read through your questions, and it seems we have a lot of people wanting to know about that book. That book I knew from the start was going to be firmly adult. And when I got the idea for these ACOTAR, I guess, spin-off novels / continuation of the series, I wanted them to be adult. I didn't want them to be shelved in YA anymore. And so the decision to repackage the the ACOTAR book, the earlier ACOTAR books, with, you know, adult covers, or what I guess the industry considers to be more adult covers, is kind of the setup for the Nesta book being released, you know, as an adult novel. And I hope my publisher doesn't mind me talking about the inner workings of these decisions. But yeah, so they wanted to release them before the Nesta novel comes out, just to kind of hopefully, God willing, introduce me to a new, you know, adult fantasy audience, and then, you know, maybe give readers of the series a chance to reread the books with exciting new covers. And it was, I mean, my publisher came up with the idea of having tattoos featured on the covers, which, because tattoos are, I think, in all of my books at this point, but, I mean, especially in the ACOTAR ones. And so we spent, you know, a couple weeks or maybe even months trying to find the right tattoo artist, you know, like browsing on Instagram, trying out like different styles. And then we found these guys, I'm blanking on their name right now because I just did this crazy like boot camp workout and every part of my body is shaking, right? I'm literally sitting at the table, like my limbs are jelly right now. And so is my brain. But we found these guys who are based out of Switzerland, I want to say. And their art was just fantastic and kind of captured the mood of the ACOTAR series. And they actually read the books and loved them, which means a lot to me when, you know, a cover artist actually takes the time to read the material they're creating the art for. And yeah, I mean, I'm so happy with how they turned out. And I've just got the final art for A Court of Mist and Fury, which I guess we'll be revealing soon, but it's really fucking awesome. So yeah, it's been like exciting to see them kind of repackaged in this new way with this cool color scheme. Yeah, and hopefully people like them as much as I do.
I think just focusing on tattoo art is such a brilliant maneuver because it also sends a very clear signal of the age line.
Mm-hmm.
That's so brilliant. And I'm sure we want to ask you about fan art. Do you have like a collection of people who have tattooed your work on themselves? I always find that to be such an incredible compliment.
Oh my God. I mean, the tattoos, when people show up to my events with tattoos of quotes from the books or, you know, illustrations on, you know, it's just like tattooed onto them. Like I mean, it's still a little overwhelming for me because, I mean, I don't have any tattoos. As someone who writes about a lot of tattoos, I have zero. And I think I probably have tattoos in my books because I am so scared of getting one myself that like the characters live out all my fantasies of getting cool tattoos. But so, I mean, you know, the act of permanently inking words or images onto their body from my books, you know, that is huge. And that, I mean, it touches me. I mean, it moves me so deeply that someone wants to do that. I mean, I've had people come up to me at events and have me just sign my signature on their body, like literally take a Sharpie and like sign on their arm or their back. And then they've gone straight to the tattoo parlor where the artist would, like, as far as they told me, would just ink over like what I had written on their skin.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, but then there's so much pressure with that because I'm like, shit, like what if I fuck up my signature on the and then like sometimes like their skin's a little sweaty. And so like the Sharpie like will like it's not like a smooth, easy surface to write on, like, you know, like sweaty human skin. And so I'm just like, in like my hands are already shaking from the pressure, and then the surface isn't ideal. And so it is so stressful for me, but also like so freaking cool that like someone wants my like shitty ass signature on their body. But yeah, I mean, it is. And then, I mean, the fan art, I mean, you're seeing anyone, I mean, anyone take the time to be creative with my books and, you know, express their enjoyment and love of the books through their own creativity. I mean, that's amazing to me. I mean, I like, now that I have a baby, I'm barely online these days just because I'm either working or with my son. But I mean, I get sent fan art periodically just from like awesome friends of mine or readers that I've come to know quite well who've just been like, hey, check this out. And I mean, it blows my mind. Like it blows my mind, especially when someone captures a character so perfectly, like just how I saw them in my head, that I'm like, I don't have the words to describe how cool that part of the job is for me.
I cannot imagine, especially because I believe I read this in a completely different subject genre, but the idea that creating in response to the things that we love is a fundamentally human thing to do, but it's also the deepest level of engagement, that when you are so moved by something, you are driven to create in response, is like a fundamental human connection. And it's so cool that your readers are connected with your books like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's that just, yeah. I mean, I'm like literally like struggling for words to convey like I find that, especially since like people always ask like, what's your daily writing schedule like where do you work, what's your like office setting, and like no one understands is that like I write in my like spandex yoga pants and like a dirty old t-shirt with my hair in a scrunchie, like unwashed for 5 days. Like I only wash my hair when my scalp hurts. Like, you know what I'm saying? And like you like put your hair up in a ponytail and you're like, ow, like what's happening here? Like that's when I'm like, oh shit, I need to shower. But I mean, I create in such a Gollum like that I mean, it's just,
the words.
But it's really like cool to see, my work go out there into the world and then kind of come back to me in a different form, like in the form of fan art or music, or people have made, short films or, any kind of creative medium. It's just, that's really amazing to me.
So what is the abbreviated hashtag for Crescent City House of Earth at Blood? Is it CC Heb CC Hebcack? Wait, Hebcrack?
No, I have not gotten to the point of thinking.
Hebcrack.
I mean, I've been manually like typing out like hashtag Crescent City, hashtag House of Earth and Blood, and it is getting really fucking old at this point. I write up like all of my captions in like a note before I post it on Instagram, and like it doesn't autofill, so I have to like make sure like each thing is correct. But I feel like House of Earth and Hoab. I don't know. This is a very difficult decision.
So what led you into the CC Hoab world? What was your point of entry for this story? I want to ask you about it. I have so many questions from our Patreon community about ACOTAR and Nesta and Nesta. And in fact, one of my questions for you was, what is your most common question from readers? And I think I already know the answer to that one. Yeah.
I mean, nowadays it's just Nesta this, Nesta that, Cassian this, Cassian that, which is awesome. But yeah, so with Crescent City, I mean, I got this idea years and years ago. And I mean, I was a big fan and writing, epic high fantasy at the time. But one of the things I probably read the most is paranormal romance, urban fantasy. Like I love them. And massive fan of J.R. Ward, Nalini Singh, Karen Marie Moning. Like, I mean, I could go on. And like, I mean, those authors are my idols. And I mean, when I would read their books, I just was like, damn, like I wish I could write, like, like I had no ideas, for a paranormal romance, urban fantasy type of book. And so, I just stayed firmly in my epic fantasy, old school fantasy type of thing. But then like a couple years ago, I guess it was more than a couple years ago, I was on tour for one of my books. Can't remember which one, but I was on an airplane flying between stops, and I was listening to this piece of music from the Gravity soundtrack. You know that movie with Sandra Bullock where she's in space? It's one of my favorite movies ever, by the way. I have never sobbed so hard in a movie as I did at the end of Gravity, like literally to the point where the seat was shaking, like my entire row was shaking with me because I was like physically convulsing with sobs. But that's a whole long story about like, you know, how it moved me and whatever. But I was listening to this piece of music from the soundtrack on this plane. And all of a sudden I just saw this scene play out in my head that wound up being the climax of the novel, which I can't even speak about without spoiling it. And I had no idea who these characters were, what this world was, but I saw this moment play out, like a movie in my head. And I, in the middle of the airplane, began crying. And in case it isn't clear already, I cry a lot. I'm a very person. I cry all the fucking time. I just get very moved by things. But I heard this piece of music and I saw this scene like pop into my head with these two characters at this pivotal moment. And I couldn't get it out of my head. I listened, like for that entire flight, it was probably like an hour flight between cities. I listened to that piece of music over and over and over and over again, just focusing on that moment. And each time I listened to that piece of music and went through that moment again, I zoomed out a little more on the characters, on the world, on what was happening. I began asking myself, who are these people? Like, why are they in this like situation? What is this situation? And I think by the time I got off that plane, I had the kernel for Crescent City. And I realized, oh shit, like this is my paranormal romance, urban fantasy / modern fantasy novel that, you know, I've always wanted to write, that combines so many of the things I love and find to be sexy, you know, angels and vampires and fae, and then in this urban setting. And I daydreamed about it for years, slowly building these characters in my head. And then I began writing it in secret for years, kind of between deadlines for books, or if I had a little bit of extra creative energy at the end of a day of working on either Throne of Glass or Akatar. I would just pound out a couple thousand words of it. And I didn't tell anyone really that I was working on it. And, after a couple of years, I had probably around 250 pages, very rough pages. But I knew that this was a story I had to tell. And as the Throne of Glass series was, wrapping up and we were looking ahead, again, publishing likes to plan things years and years and years in advance.
Yes.
They wanted to know, what did I want to write next? And this was the story. This was the story that was close to my heart in a lot of ways. And so I think I sold it to my publisher with a 1-page synopsis and my Pinterest board for it. I'm not even joking.
Wow.
I am not even joking. I have not used Pinterest in years, but initially, very early on, it was just I had a Pinterest board for it as a way to kind of get inspiration and have some idea, keep track of some ideas. And so I sent my publisher the 1-page synopsis because the shit that I'd written at that point was not ready for human eyes at all. So maybe my dog's eyes, but not human eyes. But so I sent them the 1-page synopsis, and then I was in case you just need a sense of the vibe of what I am going to write, here is my Pinterest board. And so we sold it to them, and then I actually had to write the damn thing. What I wrote initially has now been edited and, rewritten a million times over. But I think the final version of the book is what, thank God, popped into my head originally, what I wanted to capture originally. So it's kind of been this years long journey,
Wow.
Secret project that became a real project, and is now a couple days away from being out in the world as a real book, which is freaking crazy.
Speaking of final versions, I do some work at an independent bookstore, and we received copies yesterday So I was able to take a look at the finished book because I just have an arc of it. And it is stupidly gorgeous.
Isn't it? Oh my God. Yeah. I am obsessed with this book. I know that like most authors don't get control over their covers, how the book looks, but I'm fortunate enough to work with an amazing publisher who includes me in the process and wants my involvement in the cover process. And so, I mean, we like basically, God, this process must have started 2 years ago. My husband and I found the artist for the cover by browsing my like old ass Pinterest board for Crescent City. And we sent the link to the artist whose work, Carlos, I'm going to butcher his last name. I'm just going to call him Carlos because I don't want to sound stupid. But his work was, I mean, the vibe of it and like what he draw, like lots of like angels and demons type of stuff was exactly like, it was almost like he reached into my mind without knowing it. And like, that was the vibe I wanted. So my publisher reached out to him and contacted him, and he read, I think, a partial version of the manuscript that was still pretty rough. But he created the cover art based off of that. And I mean, I was so blown away by it. His original art for the cover was so beautiful that when Bloomsbury, my publisher, decided it would look more striking if they did a red wash on it. I thought it would be kind of sad to lose that beautiful original art. So we made the decision to have the original art be the end papers inside. So you've got the red cover with like the gorgeous like red wash to it, which I love. But then you open it up and you've got the end papers with the full like original, untinted artwork. And then
there's a map. I'm a sucker for a map.
Oh my God. And then the map, my publisher suggested a couple different map artists. And I mean, this woman she knocked, I sent her a map that was so stupid and horrific. Like, I can't draw. I have.
Was it a hand-drawn map?
I sent her a hand-drawn map that was like, this is like roughly where this should go. Like, it was so, I should like almost post the picture of the map that I sent and like what she made, because she took like what I would consider to be an idiot's drawing and made an amazing map out of it. And then I love, like, there are little secrets with the, like, you take off the jacket and then the front of the book is stamped with like the gold crescent moon, which that was me. Like, I told them, I was like, we already got the moon stamped on there. I feel weird taking credit for that, but and so, I mean, every part of the book is beautiful. And then, we were like very hands-on with, just the title page, like adding in the art kind of in the background of the title page. And then
the paper texture is like very thin. It reminds me of like Bible paper.
Oh my God, don't get me started. I literally call them Bible pages. And they started after A Court of Mist and Fury came out. That was my longest book to date. And the book was so long that when they printed it on the normal paper, it took up a lot of shelf space. And I mean, these are kind of like the nitty gritty, aspects of publishing that aren't that like fun to explain or talk about. But basically,
this is actually fascinating. So please don't stop.
Okay, well, you can't fit that many copies. If the book is like 3 inches thick, you can't fit that many copies on a shelf, in a bookstore. So, when the stock runs out, it's, often just left as empty space. Or if you have like an end cap, you can wedge in like 1, maybe 2 books instead of, 3 or 4. And so after Mist and Fury, my publisher decided to print on thinner paper so that we could have my long ass books, but not have them gobble up all the shelf space. And And so I think the next book that came out was a Throne of Glass book, which was even longer than Mist and Fury. So that was the first time we had the Bible pages. And to be quite candid, I hate them. I have told readers I hate them. I think my readers hate them. But the reality is that certain retailers that I won't name, won't take books that are over a certain thickness, which is also crazy. Again, because of shelf space and depth. And so in order for me to tell the stories that, the way they need to be told, which is as long ass books, we have to kind of compromise and have these Bible pages. So, it's weird for me. I mean, when I'm doing this giant virtual signing for Crescent City. I mean, you should see the state of my house. I have like 2,000 boxes of books overflowing from every room. But when I was signing the books, I was so scared every time I opened up the book that I would rip the page, just because they're very delicate.
I'm worried I'm going to be like a bull in a china shop and just like turn the page too aggressively.
Yeah, wear like a silk glove and delicately turn the page like you're going through an ancient manuscript. But so the Bible pages are kind of, I guess, a necessary evil for, in order for me to be able to tell these really long stories. We kind of have to compromise with that. Otherwise, and there was a point. So with Kingdom of Ash, the final Throne of Glass book, we printed on Bible pages for that. But the book was still freaking huge. That book was so long, just because, it was the last book in the series and I wanted to cram in everything that I could possibly, wrap up. But then the book was it was over 1,000 pages by the time it was done. And about 3 days before it was supposed to go to the printer, I get this email from my editor, or former editor, now, but, saying the book is too long. It has to be under 1,000 pages because the glue that we purchased to bind the book can't hold anything over 1,000 pages. And if it's longer than that, pages will literally fall out of the book once it's printed.
Holy crap.
This was with 3 days. And I had everything I wanted in the book. It was done. I was proud of it. It was perfect in my eyes. And I was like, I don't fucking know what to do.
You're like, what if I just took out all the commas?
Yeah.
We don't need punctuation.
I was like frantically going through stuff to try and find little like things to cut. Like if there was a chapter where there was kind of a dangling, 3 lines on like one page and the rest of it was empty, like trying to find 3 lines on like throughout the chapter where we could maybe bump that, like to save pages. But in the end, my publisher wound up, I think, like tweaking the margins or maybe bumping up the chapter headings a little bit so that dangling, like they worked some magic. So it clocked in at, I think, 996 pages.
That's that like college term paper magic right there. It's like change the font. We're gonna.
Oh my, well, so I actually do that shit with my manuscripts. They're so long that I make the margins like wider so that the page count is lower, even though the word count is still the same, but it makes me feel better. Like when I send in the book to my editor and it's like, 800 pages instead of 1,000 pages, just because I made like just widened the page a little bit more. I still do that, even though it ultimately has no effect. The books are based on, word, like the Microsoft Word document that I'm writing in, doesn't impact once they lay out the book and it's, printed format. It's all about the word count. But these are the glamorous things I've learned over the years working as a writer.
So it sounds like the second book in the Crescent City series will be like Comic Sans 8 point.
I just took a sip of my tea and almost spat it out all over my brand new MacBook Pro.
It's been christened, is what just happened.
Yeah, it's been baptized. We're talking about Bible paper. So I am told by the cover copy, by my copy, by many pieces of material about this book that there is searing romance. Okay, first of all, heck yes, searing romance. What kind of romance are we looking at here? Because as you know, we're a romance site. We have a romance readership.
Yes.
We need to talk about that part. Yeah, and then I have a buttload of questions about Nesta and Cassian again with the searing, all of the searing details is what we're looking for here.
All right, this is my favorite subject. Yeah, I mean,
we like you so much. Please come and be on the show every week.
I love that. I mean, I literally all I read, if I have time to read these days, which is not that often, thanks to a baby, but I mean, it's always romance, whether it's paranormal, contemporary, historical romance. Like that is what I read. That is what I love to read.
Yes.
But we could discuss all that in another podcast at another time.
Yes, when you're not on book tour.
Yeah, but so the romance in Crescent City is what I would call like slow burn, but also hate to friends to more. Where
thank you.
Hunt and Bryce, the two main characters like literally hate each other and curse at each other. And I mean, Bryce, my main character, she hates, the alpha male type. She calls them alpha holes. And Hunt is sort of an alpha hole in some ways, but also surprises her in a lot of ways and challenges her ideas of, whether a man being assertive, a male being assertive, because he's not a human man. He's an angel, a very sexy angel assassin. But, whether, him giving his opinion counts as, him being an alpha hole. So they have this very I don't know. They're at each other's throats for a good section of the book, but both of them are pretty alone when they meet each other. Bryce, because most of her friends were murdered, and then Hunt, because he's this assassin with a pretty brutal past, and he doesn't want friends. And the two of them become each other's person. To quote from Grey's Anatomy, Hunt and Bryce become this dynamic duo together. And I mean, the sexual tension is there from the start. But, it definitely goes from hate to friends helping each other heal from their pasts, to, hot, sexy times, that will continue. Definitely. The arc of the sexy times will continue to greater levels in book 2. I will not spoil what it is, but I'm very excited for some of the sex scenes in book 2. And I know that sounds so weird saying it, but there will be some magic involved, magic emotionally, but also literal magic involved in some of those.
It's the reins are off. And you're just I'm just going to go balls to the wall with this because I have the opportunity.
Exactly. And I mean, at this point, I've kind of gotten over my family reading my books. So I'm just whatever. I'm writing the books that I want to read.
Well, grandma's into it. So
yeah, I mean, at least my grandma will support me. My dad will just rip out those pages and pretend he never saw them. It's cool with me. But yeah, so I mean, the romance and the romance was one of the reasons why I wanted to write this book in the first place, because I wanted it to be that slow burn, hate to friends to, more than that. One of my favorite books ever is Alice Clayton's Wallbanger. Have you guys ever read that?
That's a good one. I love her Hudson Valley series.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I okay. And that's one of my favorite, hate to friends. I love how they become like buddies. To sexual partners. Such an
to fuck buddies.
Fuck buddies. And then Sally Thorns, The Hating Game. Have you guys read that one?
Oh yes.
I've read that book 5 times. I love that book. That's another one of my favorite, like, hate to friends to more. And then, I mean, Elle Kennedy's, God, she's got a Briar U. Was there a doggy? Do I hear a little doggy in the back?
That's Zeb. He supports all of your book choices. He's very supportive of all of your favorites. He thinks you have excellent taste and cannot contain himself.
Oh my God. Well, yeah, Elle Kennedy writes she's written a ton of romance books. And then she's got this like hockey series, like college hockey series. I'm trying to remember all the names are like blurring in my head.
Don't worry, we'll list them all. No worries.
Oh my God. What's the first one called? It's driving me crazy.
Is it The Deal?
The Deal is the first one. Where that is also like hate to friends to like more. And I like, that's like one of my favorite like tropes, I guess, like aside from the marriage of convenience thing, which like I also love. But yeah, so yeah, the romance in Crescent City was one of my, like the things that I didn't like plan it ahead of time. Like, I'm going to do this kind of romance. It was just, I had these two characters, and when I put them in a room together, like that was the kind of romance that unfolded. And it was really, really fun to write.
You have so much taste in line with Amanda. I feel like you guys need to just recommend books to each other. Yes. Like your tastes line up perfectly.
That's great.
So I have questions from our Patreon community. When I announced that I was doing this interview, I had this like response of, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And I'll just read some of the questions because they all have a very similar theme. And I love that one of my questions, like I mentioned, was, well, what are the things that your readers ask you most? I know the answer now.
Yeah.
I am aware of the answer here. So Molly wanted to say that she loves ACOTAR.
Oh, thanks.
She wanted to know how many books are going to focus on Nesta. And Olivia wanted me to ask about Nesta and Cassian because it is her favorite ship. And if it was hard to write about Nesta, given the reactions to the character.
Nesta's new book is, I guess I'll focus on like Nesta first and then talk about the future plans for the series. But so Nesta, as of right now, I'd sent in draft one, back in early January, and I have my edits on it, but I'm about to go on tour, so edits are taking a break. But Nesta right now is just one book. And my plan for these ACOTAR, the continuing ACOTAR series was to have it shift to romance parent, like one couple, like per book. And the first one is Nesta and Cassian. And Nesta from the start, I mean, when she appeared in the series, in the original trilogy, I knew that some people were going to hate her. Some people were going to love her. I wrote her the way she appeared in my head and in my heart. And I had been waiting a long time to write her story. And this is actually probably the first time I've had to kind of talk in depth about Nesta's story, but writing that book was a extraordinarily emotional thing for me. That Nesta struggles a lot with her mental health, with facing her past, with healing herself and learning to love herself and open herself up to other people. And there were some aspects of her journey that, my personal life never really works its way into my books, but sometimes I feel like I'd sort out my shit through writing my characters in my books. A lot of Nesta's, some of her issues were ones that, really resonated with me. And it was hard to write, not because I was thinking about, whether people liked her or not, but just because I had to, open up that vein and let myself bleed all over the page, basically. And so her journey means a lot to me. The romance with her and Cassian is like, there is so much sex in that book that so I just got my first edit letter, and my editor was like, so do we need all these sex scenes?
Yes, we do. Thank you.
To give you an idea of how, like, I thought I was being like, I thought I reined myself in with no, I'm not even joking, because there was a threesome scene in this book that I wrote that was so fucking hot. But then I cut it because I was like, no, this is like too much. Like my editor, who like, you know, is totally sex positive for books, like I knew, I was like, she will like keel over dead if she reads this. So I refrained from including the like raunchy threesome scene.
You should still include it as some kind of like pre-order bonus.
Oh my God. I don't even know if I can release that into the world, because it is like as filthy sex scene as I have ever written. Filthy in the best possible way, but oh my God. Yeah. But
if our votes count for anything, we both say yes, definitely. Yes,
listen,
absolutely yes.
We had a good review for a book with an alien hero who has mandibles. So I think
this is nothing. You should bring it out. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, yeah, but so as of right now, like I need to not tone down the sex, because the content of the sex is fine. It's just like there were some, I guess, like just so much sex that like my editor is like, it's like, you know, some scenes were just not boring to her, but she was like, we could like do something else in this scene instead of them banging. But yes, I mean, so there is like plenty of like sex and, you know, the romance and like, you know, the build to it. But Nesta's emotional journey and how she learns to face these dark and sharp and difficult parts of herself. You know, that is something that it really moved me and was hard for me to write. I mean, I've not really talked about this publicly at all, but I mean, like in the past, this year, I started going to therapy for the first time in my life. And I mean, I am now a big believer in therapy and medication. I mean, I struggle with, you know, severe anxiety and some depressive symptoms as a result of the anxiety. And I found it, I don't know, not strange, but just the timing of it seemed almost fated that I was writing about a character going through all of this. And I'd planned Nesta's journey well before I was going on this journey myself. But I found it, you know, really, it helped me in a lot of ways. And I found it, you know, like, I don't know, the fate of the universe or something was playing into it, where, you know, Nesta was going on this journey. At the same time, I was, you know, finally going on this journey for myself. And I mean, I told you guys about my boot camp that I was just doing this morning. And one of the things that Nesta does that helps with her anxiety and gives her a sense of focus is physical training and exercise. And I mean, I'm a profoundly lazy person. Like I hate moving, but I mean, I've been doing this program for like, let's say 2 months straight. And I mean, I find myself now like the night before, like looking at like what's coming up for my workout the next day, because I'm like excited to like get my ass kicked, and it clarifies something in my mind, the movement and the breath and the sweating. So yeah, I mean, that's not to say that like, you know, Nesta's book is like about me. That's not like, her journey is still different from mine, but I think it allowed me to get deeper insight into her character, to also be going on a slightly similar journey at the same time, that she's going through it. So this book, you know, Crescent City was really close to my heart in a lot of ways because Bryce has a slightly similar situation. But this one really hit home in a lot of ways for me. And I've got a lot of work to do on the book still, a lot of editing to go before it comes out. I think it's supposed to come out in like a year from now, like maybe next February. Don't quote me on that. But we've got a lot of editing to do before then. But it's one of those projects that I'm really excited to work on, and I really hope will resonate with readers who maybe are going through similar things. And, you know, hopefully leave them with a sense of hope for themselves and, you know, maybe healing and, you know, just, I want all my books to leave my readers with a sense of hope and happiness, and that things can get better. I mean, that's very important to me, actually.
Well, as someone who goes to therapy every week and has an appointment at 2 today, welcome.
Nice.
Welcome to the therapy fold.
Oh man, I love it so much. And it's like, I just told my therapist, probably weird to say this on a podcast, but I was like, I really look forward to therapy once a week. And just because, and like, I was like, just because I have so much that I've realized that I need to discuss and work through. And I actually, once I get back from my tour, I asked my therapist to bump it up to twice a week, just because I realized, like, holy shit, I got a lot of things to tell you, and a lot of things that I need help figuring out. I had never done therapy until this past November, and it's been a gradual life-changing thing, along with medication. But I mean, it's a long road, but it's one that I'm so happy I finally started on. And I was afraid, I mean, for a while to start to like even do therapy, because I thought it would mean that I, somehow was weak, or and like, I was afraid that they would put me on medication, because I had heard from other writers that, medication, fucked up your ability to create. And so I think I suffered for a while, until it got to a really bad breaking point when I couldn't take it anymore. Because I was so scared of not being able to function, like, not being able to create if I got put on drugs. Meanwhile, I think the medications that I'm on literally saved my life. And they have changed my life. And they have not affected my creativity at all. And, maybe it's different for other writers, but I just want to like put out into the universe, like, if you are hesitant to go to therapy because you are a creative type and you are scared that medication will mess up your ability to create, that was not the case for me. It has not impacted that part of my brain. It has allowed me to be able to create again without these anxieties and fears that were debilitating, interfering with it. So I'm a big supporter of therapy, medication, and I meditate 4 times a day and I exercise, and so like I'm doing a lot of like self-care things right now it's been an interesting journey for the past few months.
I've done therapy for like most of my life, but then on the opposite side, I have a younger brother. He's 26. And I remember asking him one time, Zach, would you ever consider going to therapy? And his response was, why? Nothing's wrong with me. I was like, Thank you so much, Zach, as someone who goes to therapy every week.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, that's the thing. Like I think I had that mentality, like myself, where I was like,
it's a very common stigma.
If you feel like, if going to therapy meant that something was wrong with me. And as someone who has, tried to do my best my whole life, admitting that I was not okay, that there was something, that I was like suffering, like it wasn't a sign of weakness. God, if my parents hear this will be the first time that they know that I'm going to therapy. I haven't told my parents yet. I'm sure that's really weird. But like, that's the thing. Like, I want to talk about it. Like, because I had this misconception in my head that going to therapy, being on medication was a sign of weakness, that it would somehow the medication would impact my creativity. Because I had heard from other writers that it did, and they had to go off their meds because they couldn't create. And I mean, I'm my family's breadwinner. My husband works with me, full time. And if I can't write, then like we're fucked. And so like, I was terrified of like, oh my God, like if I can't write, then what do I do? But that wasn't the case for me. And so even if it's like strange for me, and I'm sure I'm using the right terminology, like I've never spoken about like this shit that goes on inside my head and what I've been doing to help myself. But I feel like I want to speak about it just for anyone who, was like me, or, maybe like your brother, like who just thinks, a sign, like, nothing's wrong with me, I'm fine.
Well, he's an attractive white dude who's never needed glasses or braces or anything in his life. Yeah. So I wasn't surprised that this was his response.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to explain the feeling of, oh, thank God I have therapy this week. I know where to put this feeling. Exactly. I have someone to talk to. The feeling of, I know what to do with this feeling and I know who I can get help with it from. I know who I can go to for help. That is the greatest feeling. And it's really hard to communicate that to someone who isn't aware that that's a thing that you can do.
Yeah, no. And I had no idea until I started going just how powerful it would be. I mean, I tell my husband everything. I mean, like we are like oversharers in our family, but I feel like he knows what he knows about the struggles and episodes that I've had in the past. But I mean, he's not a trained medical professional, and this past fall, it got to a point where like I basically had a 2-week running panic attack that, you know, it wasn't like the panic attack that like some of my friends have had where, you know, they can't breathe, they're sitting on the floor. Like it was and I didn't know it was a panic attack until my psychiatrist told me that, you know, like panic attacks don't just have to be like, you know, unable to breathe, you know, sitting on the floor. Like it was like a full body, like sensation, like my body was full of acid. And, you know, just like crying and flipping out, and like, you know, I was a mess. And I'd had similar episodes in the past, but ones that had usually gone away after a day or two, but this one wasn't going away. And I was looking ahead to the future, and I was like, I can't imagine a future where I have to keep going through this, or I get to a point where this just doesn't stop. And that was the point where, you know, I've got my son now, and I decided to go to therapy partially for him to, you know, get better for him, but also for myself. Cause I was suffering, but it took me a long time to realize that I was suffering. But then the act of being able to go into someone and explain what I was going through, and actually have someone explain to me what I was going through. Like if you had asked me beforehand, like if I had anxiety and depression, I would have said no, absolutely not. But as I've been working with my therapist, I mean, she's explained to, like, you know, she has explained like, yeah, you do have those things. And, you know, like, and giving me ways to manage them and face them and understand, you know, what is unique in my brain and, you know, heart that causes these things. So, I mean, it's an ongoing journey, but it's one that I am so grateful that I finally started going on.
I am so glad that you did. I mean, you've never met me, but I am so very, very glad that you did, because it is not worth the agony of thinking, all right, I just have to think my way out of this.
Yeah.
I could just think myself into feeling better. No, you can't solve the problem with the same brain that's creating the problem.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I did for years. That is what I did for years until I couldn't do it anymore. I was like, I can think and rationalize and calm myself down. And then I stopped being able to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have an additional comment from someone on my Patreon that came in after I sent you the questions. Okay. And I wanted to share this with you because I know that you probably are very well aware that what you do makes a difference. But I also think that it's incredibly important and powerful to share that you can get help for things that are scary and in your mind, and that it won't make it worse. It will make it better. Mm-hmm. Stephanie says, I would love for Sarah to know that her series has helped me realize that I was in a toxic relationship. And it was the first fantasy I've loved as dearly as Harry Potter. So good on you.
I'm like, I've like got like tears in my eyes right now.
I read this question and I teared up.
Yeah.
Now her question is, do you know anyone who acts like Reese in real life? I know there are wonderful men out there, but Reese is the best hero I've ever read because he works so well with Feyre, so well. Like their plans to save the world, and he encourages her at all costs. It's in just the way she needs him to. Are there heroes that inspired Reese, anyone in real life? And if you know one, I can connect you with Stephanie so you could set her up.
So one of the things that I constantly get asked is whether my husband was the inspiration for Reese, because my husband is, tall, dark, and handsome, but also incredibly supportive of me and my career. And I always tell readers, like, no, like, my husband does not have wings. He did not inspire Reese. But I mean, like literally, like we found like pictures on Instagram where like people like snapped photos of him like at an event, like, waiting, like, off to the side of the stage, and we're like, real life Reese or something like that. And people refuse to believe that Josh like is not the real life Reese, but in some ways, yeah, he is. I mean, I gave him Reese's birthday. I gave Reese his birthday just as a like nod to the readers who have like pestered me. But I mean, I think I'm able to write about that kind of relationship because that's the kind of relationship I have with my husband, where he is so incredibly, I'm going to cry talking about this, but he is so incredibly supportive of me and my career, but also me as a human being. And I mean, I couldn't do any of what I do without him. I mean, he's my manager, but also, I mean, he takes care of our son full time. But he's also my rock. He's the person that, if something good, something bad happens, he is that first call I make. He's the person where if I see an article on the New York Times, like I call him up and tell him about it. Like he is my best friend. And I know a lot of people say that about their spouses, but he is literally my best friend. And, we will laugh until we're crying at times, over some stupid joke or, something our son does. And yeah, so I mean, Reese wasn't specifically inspired by my husband, but I think I was able to understand that kind of relationship and have Feyre and Reese develop that kind of relationship because of what I'm so blessed to have in my life. And unfortunately, Josh does not have any brothers. He does not even have like a single, like an unmarried cousin that I could recommend. I think all of his friends are married. So unfortunately, I got the only one. But I mean, I think it's so important to find a partner, a romantic partner who is supportive of you. And, Josh knows everything about me, good and bad. And he has been with me on my worst days. And he has held my hand through so many hard and awful things that have happened in my life. And, never wavered. And he has cried with me and laughed with me. And so for all my readers, like, I hope that they find that person for them that, that can be their best friend and their rock. And I think that's part of the appeal of Reese is that, he is there for Feyre. He understands what she's going through. He wants her to have, to obviously be his mate and his love, but he also wants her to have her own life with her own passions. And maybe subconsciously, bits of my own relationship work their way into that. I have not like analyzed every single thing that Reese and Feyre have done and compared it to like my own life. But yeah, I think it ultimately just stems from the fact that I'm fortunate enough to have this marvelous man in my life that has allowed me to kind of look at relationships like Reese and Feyre's and, kind of write them. And I love that people, I love that people are like obsessed with Reese because I'm obsessed with Reese. Yeah.
You're just writing your own catnip.
Yeah, I basically am.
Now, Taryn asked me, and I don't know if this is a question you can answer. You use a lot of music. You've talked about how Crescent City was inspired by the Gravity soundtrack, and you have playlists. How do you discover your music? Do you sort of stumble into it, or are there pieces where you're like, this is evoking a feeling and I want to articulate this feeling?
I mean, I have like, oh my God, like 20,000 songs in my iTunes library. Like, I am a music junkie. I have zero musical talent. I love music. To give you an idea of how little musical talent I have. So when I was like 11 until I was about 13, 14, I took piano lessons. And I made my parents, I didn't make them, but I kind of did. I made them buy me a piano, like when I was starting, like, so they invested in this piano. Cause I was like, yes, I really want to play piano and like be great at it. Cause I love music so much. I was fucking terrible at piano.
Oh no.
And to give you an idea of just how bad I was, after 3 years of lessons with this like piano teacher who was, I don't like saying bad things about other women because I'm all about women supporting other women. But this woman was like this old ass witch, and not the good kind of witch that I love. Like, I think I am like a witch. Like, I've got my crystals. I've got like my white sage. Like, I literally am like full on like witch, and I love witches. But this woman was like the Wicked Witch of the West. Like, she was such a nasty, mean old woman. I hated her. I hated going to lessons with her. And after 3 years with this old ass cranky woman, we had this recital at I grew up in New York City, and we had this recital at Steinway Hall in New York.
As you do, no pressure.
As we do. And all of her students came to do the recital, and I was fucking terrified. And it got worse because these, 7-year-olds were going up and playing like, pieces by Chopin. And I get up to do my piece for the recital. And do you know what I played in front of all these people and these talented kids? I played My Heart Will Go On from Titanic. And I fucked up half the song.
No,
my parents like sunk down into their seats. I mean, this was like during the full Titanic craze, because I saw Titanic like 3 times in theaters and would cry myself to sleep over Jack dying. Like, I was so obsessed, and I like mangled the song. But yeah, I did not play like Chopin or like anything fancy. I played My Heart Will Go On. And after that, I never had a single piano lesson. My parents got rid of the piano.
Parents are like, might as well just pack it in. I think we're done here.
We're done. Yeah. So despite that, I love music. I love classical music. I love, like literally every kind of music. I mean, there's always music playing in my house when I'm working out. And the stuff that I usually listen to when I'm writing is mostly movie scores, that I usually from movies that I have, watched, but also just from some composers that I know I love, and I'll, listen to a soundtrack. But I also listen to, I guess, contemporary, like modern music while I'm writing as well. But yeah, I mean, the music, I mostly it's weird for me to write a scene without music playing. Like if I write a scene in silence, it's very bizarre to me, because usually music kind of provides the mood, I don't know, like some of the action maybe. I think my thing with movie scores is that there's like an inherent storytelling in the music itself, because it is literally providing, the background to the story that it's being told. So there's something that, connects with my creative brain with that kind of music. But I mean, I just listen to everything. I mean, like right now, my favorite band is Churches. I don't know if you ever heard of that band. They're like,
yes, absolutely.
That's like Churches is my favorite band. But then I'm also like super into like Casey Musgraves and Creedence Clearwater Revival. Like, I mean, like my music, and then like, Beethoven and Tchaikovsky, and like I listen to like everything, and I connect to like almost every single kind of music. And I can be listening to the radio in the car, and I'll hear a song, and it will remind me so much of my characters, or just like sprout this idea in my head that I'll have to like take a like screenshot of the song so I don't forget, but then also like just write down ideas in that moment. Like there was a scene in Air of Fire, one of the Throne of Glass books, that was inspired by Imagine Dragons' Radioactive. And when I first heard that song on the radio, like I literally saw this scene play out in my head. And like it's this weird thing that I can't explain, because again, no musical talent. I can't sing. I literally can't do anything like with music, but something about it just clicks with whatever brain chemistry is going on with the ideas, and creates these stories in my head.
Do you have any favorite film soundtracks?
Oh man, there are a lot. I'm a big fan of the Jaws soundtrack, which
oh, good one.
Like, people have like this weird, like they think it's just that like dun dun,
yeah.
But the music, the score itself is actually brilliant. And I mean, I am such a fucking nerd. Like, I mean, I could tell you how the Jaws soundtrack was inspired by Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, and like the certain notes like that, and like Bambi. Like the Bambi soundtrack, like also like Rite of Spring, like, you know, like they're like a lot of the movie soundtracks, like you can hear the influence of like classical composers in those that have built these iconic scores. I mean, if you watch Bambi, like the music that plays when the hunters, like when man comes, is like so similar to like, you know, some of the with Jaws, like later on, like it's like that like similar like kind of two-note like pacing thing. And yeah, other favorite soundtracks, the Gravity soundtrack, I also love the Signs soundtrack, like from like the M. Night Shyamalan film.
Oh, that movie fucked me up.
I love that movie. If that movie is on TV, I always watch it. Like that is one, like I love like disaster movies. Like I have watched San Andreas like 15 times, and it's like terrible. Like I love The Rock. I love him. Like I love The Rock, but that is a bad fucking movie. And if it is on TV, I will watch the shit out of it. Like it was on TV last week, and like I just put it on and watched the whole day, like with commercials. Like I love disaster movies. Independence Day is one of my another favorite soundtrack, Independence Day. But like that's one of my favorite movies ever. Like I love, like, I guess seeing American cities get destroyed by horrible things. I don't know. I love, that was a joke to any readers. I really don't want that to ever happen to anybody. But I don't know. I love disaster films. And I mean, Twister was on the other night, and like that, like, I've seen that movie like 25 times. Like Twister, I think, is actually a fantastic movie.
Sarah, I wrote a college paper about Twister.
Oh my, could we be friends forever?
Yes. Okay. I love that movie so much. I could quote it, and I wrote a whole paper about identical scenes that take place in multiple places. Like when you first see her and her mom and her dad, later on there's a scene of another family, and they're all dressed the exact same way. So she keeps seeing her family in different parts of the film. I wrote a whole paper about that motif. I love that movie.
Oh my God. Okay. I like, while we were doing this crazy virtual signing, we had like, you know, the TV on to pass the time, and I put on Twister because it was, you know, I needed to watch it. And my father-in-law was like, I was like, have you ever seen this movie? And he was like, no, like
Cal.
And then like I was like it's the best. But then like my mother-in-law was like, we saw this in theaters. Like, don't you remember? He had no memory of it. And then like I kept watching like his face to see like if he was into it. No. I mean, granted, we were like, you know, packaging books and like putting like postage on like, you know, the boxes and everything. So it wasn't really like sit down watching, but like he just like, I don't know. Like I thought at least when like the sister tornadoes were coming, like he was into it, but no.
Were you like nudging him or like, watch this part? This is a good part.
Yeah, well, I kept making like subtle little comments being like, ooh, this is a good scene. But no.
And I mean, let's be real. Carrie Elwes has the worst Southern accent in the whole world.
I still get like sad when he dies, but like then I'm also like, yeah, you fucker. Like that's
he's definitely made some strides in the Southern accent department. He was in the recent season of Stranger Things, and he played an evil mayor. And his Southern accent is better.
I forgot he was in that.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Stranger Things. The third season, I fucking loved that season.
Uma Thurman's daughter is a treasure.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Like, I can tell, like, that she was my favorite part of the whole season. And I mean, like, she's such a fantastic actress, and I loved that character, and I loved that whole like the Scoop Troop, is that what they call it? Like the whole bond. Like that was my favorite part of the whole thing. Like I literally have chills right now, and I don't know why. I'm excited talking about
the scene where Dustin sings the Never Ending Story theme song.
My God.
I was in tears with laughter.
That was like my like. Never Ending Story. It was like one of those movies that I grew up with. So it just like, and like I used to sing that song, like, you know, to myself, like obsessively. And so seeing that, I was like, this is my life, like this like level of humiliation and awkwardness. And that was just so brilliant. I loved it. I want the next season immediately.
I feel like we've hit this amazing nerdception at this moment. This is like the most fun. I'm having the greatest time. Oh my gosh. Too. Oh, I'm so glad. Okay. So we've already talked a lot. One of the questions I like to ask when we do an interview, I like to ask, you know, what you do to look after your creative self. And we've already talked about therapy and exercise, music, and, you know, having children and wonderful supportive spouses. Is there anything you want to add to that list, or have we kind of covered that?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I like to do is I like to take time off from writing every now and then to just let my brain rest. And I don't know. I mean, like I fully believe in like making sure that I have a life, and that's something I've struggled with because, you know, juggling multiple books a year requires a lot of time. And so I'm still learning, you know, how to balance being Gollum in my cave unwashed and alone, with, you know, getting out into the world and seeing things. And it's funny because usually if I get stuck writing writing a scene, if I go take a walk, it'll just like being out in the world, like will just free something in my brain.
Oh yeah.
I also take a lot of like baths, like meditative baths where I like put on like Tibetan singing bowl music and like light candles.
Sarah is anti-bath. I am pro-bath.
And I'm not anti-bath because I don't like the concept of being in warm water. I actually love it. I just get cold so easily that I can never stay warm. Well, However, I will park my ass in the shower for a year.
Do you know? Okay, so recently, this is the stupidest story of all time.
We're here for it. Please tell.
Okay, so recently, one night, my son had his bath, and then my husband, we put him to bed, and then immediately after, my husband jumped into the shower, and we've got one of those showers with like a rain shower, then like jets coming out of the wall. Like it's awesome. So he started his shower, and then I started my bath. And like halfway through the tub filling up, the hot water ran out.
No!
And so I got so fucking upset and mad that when my husband came out of the shower, I popped my head out of my like little spa bathroom. That's what I call it. It's not a fancy bathroom. It is literally just like this like sad tub. This like one bathroom that no one uses. I popped my head out of the bathroom and I was like, "You motherfucker, you used up all my hot water." and then he like looked at me just like, "What?" And I was like, "I have no hot water for my bath, for my meditative bath." I was like, "I just put in $50 worth of salts and oils, and now I'm going to waste all that money." And so I was like, "You should go fill up some pots of water and boil them for me and put them in the tub." And then he just was like, "Okay." And he walked downstairs. And so I just like sat in the bathroom, like with my candles and like Tibetan like singing bowls going.
Just
and
simmering in your own like anger.
So mad. And then like I just was like I climbed into my lukewarm tub and I was like, "This fucking sucks, this motherfucker." Like cooking him. 20 minutes later, like there's a knock on the bathroom door. And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, I was like, I told you not to disturb me during my bath time. When it's like I climb out of the bath, and then there he is with a giant like lobster pot full of like freshly baked water. And he literally went and did it for me. And I was like, I am such a fucking piece of shit. Like, I was joking. I was joking about boiling water for me. I was like, oh my God. Like, he literally boiled it in our kitchen and then like carried it all the way upstairs. And so then like he like dumped it into the tub, and then like it was enough hot water. And by that point, more hot water had actually filled up in the house. So I was able to have my hot bath. And then when I came downstairs, he already had a second pot boiling for me. I was just like, oh my God, like I am such like a
You're like, I'm a garbage person.
I was like, I am a piece of shit. I was like, I'm the worst fucking person of all time. But like he knows how much I love my baths. So like, and I guess he felt guilt. Like, I don't know, like I'm a monster. Like I'm a monster when it comes to my baths. Yeah. So that is my bath story. I immediately regret telling that story because it makes me look like a awful person. And my husband is obviously a saint for putting up with me. But I take my baths like very serious, like maybe a little too seriously. But that's, I kind of, when I'm lying in the bath, like sweating it out with my like beautiful salts and oils and like my music going and the candles going, like, I don't know, there's like, it's like a whole ritual that I have that's like an unwinding of the day. And I do some of my meditation in the bath. And I don't know, I just find it a nice way for me to unwind. And I started doing yoga recently too. And I actually freaking love that. I never thought I would say that in a million fucking years. But I love yoga. Just because I think it is, at least for my creative brain, a time for my creative brain to almost turn off, and the act of breathing and focusing on like what I am doing with my body and being present in every motion, just because like I have like my hamstrings are so fucking tight that I need all of my concentration just to like lift my leg towards the ceiling. Like that is good for me.
I love yoga. I can conk out in child's pose. Like I will fall right asleep. Like head to the mat, I'm out. But like during other poses, it's like be present. But like my mind wanders. It's like,
yeah.
Do they have condoms for micro penises? Like it's just like this weird brain spiral of like things I'm gonna Google when I get out of here. Like,
well, I usually have to like check my email like 5 times before I begin like yoga or exercise, just to make sure like I'm not like missing anything. And then like once I start, like I forget. And that's the thing. Like that's what I found that I find like very addictive and I love, is the being able to forget about everything else. But then my mind does wander. Not to condoms for micro. We were like I feel like my family, like me and my in-laws and husband, were talking about someone like literally last night who had an inverted penis. I don't even know. Like this is how much me and my husband and like his parents, like we are like I shouldn't.
How do they feel about the sexy times in the books then?
Oh, well, the first, when my mother-in-law's read like, all my books, and when she read ACOTAR the first time, the first thing she asked me was, were these sex scenes inspired by you and Josh?
No!
I was like, oh my God, we're talking about your son, first of all. And no, I'm not like banging him and taking notes on like, positions.
Hang on, honey, let me grab a pen.
Yeah. She's cool with that.
Oh.
Thankfully, she has not asked me that question since then. That was like my first book with an actual like sex, like on the page sex scene in it. So I guess like a lot of my family had a lot of questions for me.
Did you have like a press conference for your family?
Yeah, Thanksgiving, I got up and made a speech.
Game on. I always ask this question.
All right.
What books that you've enjoyed do you want to tell people about? Give us all your romance recs. Tell us all the books.
Oh man. Okay. Books that I would recommend to anyone. I mean, if you like YA, I read this book called Serpent and Dove by Shelby Maherman.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, where that's like a hate to love romance and like really cool world building. Like it's about like witches and like the elite witch hunters who are sworn to kill them, and like a witch in hiding gets married to one of these witch hunters. So it's like a marriage of convenience type plot. And he has no idea that she's a witch. And that like if she's found out, like he has to kill her. And so they like, you know, slowly fall in love, like two enemies slowly fall in love. I got an arc of that book, and it arrived on my doorstep, and I meant just to skim the first, paragraph, like as I opened the package, and then, jump ahead and it's 1 a.m. and I haven't put the book down.
Oops.
I loved that book. I mean, I love anything by Nalini Singh, like her Guild Hunter series, her
so good
swing books. She has a new thriller, Madness of Sunshine. That's like, she's so fucking talented. I want everyone to read all of Nalini Singh's books, like, because her world building, brilliant.
Please tell me you've read Alona Andrews.
Yes, I've read The Magic Bites, the Kate Daniels.
You need to read the Hidden Legacy series. It's like magical houses set in urban fantasy Houston.
Oh my God. Okay. Yes. I am here for that. I will add that to the list. Who else? I mean, Karen Marie Moning's Fever series is one of my favorite series ever. Mac, the main character's evolution from this Southern, party girl-esque person to this badass warrior is probably my favorite character arc of all time. I just recently reread the Wallflowers series by Lisa.
Do you have a favorite?
I don't know. Maybe the Devil
in Winter
Devil in
is
Winter.
Like the standout favorite.
Yeah. I mean that one I think is my favorite. That was like when I decided to reread them, it was because I wanted to get to that book again. But I love all of them. I mean, I devoured the series so fast the first time that I think I missed a lot of the female empowerment elements of it. And then when I read it the second time, I was like, man, like this is just like brilliant. And I moved into a new house in the past 2 years, but again, Gollum writing in my cave, I never go out. So I just recently met 2 of my neighbors who are also moms, and they love to read. And so we went out for drinks, and I was gushing to them about the Wallflowers books. And I just got a text from one of them being like, I'm already on book 3.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
well done.
Yeah, so I'm excited to spread the word about, because she had never read historical romance. She's read historical books, but never historical romance. And I was like, oh honey, welcome to this amazing, amazing world. Yeah. And what else did I read recently? Oh, I read a book. I mean, this wasn't recent. This just shows you how little reading I've done lately. Evie Drake Starts Over. Is that Evie Drake?
Yes.
Evie Drake Starts Over. I loved that book. I love that. There's something very cozy about that book, which I can't.
Yes.
I love those books where it's I don't know. I just feel cozy reading it. And you can curl up in bed and read it. And I don't know. I actually want to read that book again just because I loved it so much.
And that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you to Sarah J. Maas for hanging out with us and having such an incredibly thoughtful and wonderful conversation. I keep using the word wonderful, and that's the best one I can come up with. If you would like to find her, you can find her at her website, sarahjmaas, MAAS.com. On Instagram, she's TheRealSJMaas, and you can find out upcoming tour information at worldofsarahjmaas.com/events. I will have links to all of these places in the show notes at smartbitchestrashybooks.com/podcast. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm at sbjpodcast@gmail.com. And if you would like to join our Patreon and help make sure that every episode is transcribed and get early heads up about nifty interviews like this one, have a look at patreon.com/smartbitches. As always, I end every episode with a terrible, terrible joke, and I really like this one, which means it's terrible. Like it's really, really bad. You ready? Here we go. Did you hear about the new band called Duvet? Yeah, Duvet. They're a cover band. It's so stupid. I love it. And you know what? Duvet is a great name for a band. Thank you to Too Cool to Socialize for that terrible, terrible joke. Duvet. It's a cover band. I am the most easily amused person, I swear. On behalf of everyone here, including my dog, who has been thankfully very quiet while I did this, we wish you the very best of reading. Have a great weekend, and we will see you back here next week. Smart Podcast Trashy Books is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You can find more outstanding podcasts to listen to at frolic.media/podcasts. All right, I'm now recording our conversation. Do I have your consent to record you?
Yes, you do.
Yes.
Thank you. Hey, Amanda, I can record you, right?
Yes, you can.
I figured you were fine with it because we've done this before. Okay, I am so excited to talk to you. Oh my gosh, levitating.
Oh, this is awesome. I'm really excited.
Oh, thank you. That is so incredible. When we heard from your publicist, I was like, holy crap, seriously? Although maybe I should make it a goal to have as many excellent Sarahs on the podcast in a year as I can.
The year of Sarahs.
That's what I was thinking. Like the year of Penny from Happy Endings, if anyone has watched that.
No.
Have you thought about changing your name, Amanda?
Well, I have a cousin named Sarah.
Oh, that works.
And I was very upset growing up because like, the biblical meanings, like Amanda means beloved and Sarah means like princess.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was fucking pissed. I was like, I want to be a princess. What is this?
Sorry.
There's the dog is barking. Sorry if you.
Fine. We have animal noises on the podcast all the time.
Okay.
Oh yeah, my dog will definitely bark. And what happens is the animals get a line in the transcript, so Annie will have Annie bark. So it's great.
Right.
We love it. Animal noises. If the garbage truck shows up, like the UPS person arrives, it's great. No worries.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay, so now that we have established what a professional high-grade operation I am running here,